everyone, and welcome to Call Your Hits, a Storm Riders Airsoft podcast. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Today is episode 69. Nice. Okay, so with that meme out of the way, we thought this would be a great episode to dedicate to talking about nice things. If you were to just base your expectations for Airsoft on what you see online, you'd see a lot of cheating, people being rude, drama, players and teams taking themselves like way too seriously, all that kind of stuff. And while that does happen, most of the time, I would even venture to say the majority of the time, Airsoft is a super fun hobby with lots of really cool people from all walks of life happily enjoying their leisure time playing toy soldier. And over the years, we've witnessed and we've been a part of some really nice things, either on the Airsoft field or, as I sometimes say, Airsoft adjacent. So today, we thought we'd share some of those experiences in the hopes that you'll give some thought to some of the nice things you've experienced too. And I'd highly recommend you share them with us either in the comments or on the Discord.
Absolutely. That way we can, all sort of revel in the actual feel-good aspects of this hobby. Because, we're as bad as anyone else about watching, clickbait YouTube videos about Airsoft, or at least I am, Mm-hmm. Especially if they have a PX4 in the thumbnail. It works every time. But really, if you watch a lot of YouTube videos, you get the impression that Airsoft is just, all cheating all the time. And it really is, I think, the polar opposite of that. I think that the vast majority of Airsoft players are honorable players and just chill people to hang out with.
Absolutely.
That has been almost universally my experience.
Yeah. And, when you think about like all the nice things that happen on the Airsoft field, I think that happens, at least for us, almost every single game. You'll see players helping players. You see that all over. I mean, we talked to Jordan, several weeks ago about his experiences and also many months ago talking about how he got started into Airsoft. And a lot of that really, positive experience for him was him starting out and players sort of taking him under his wing or giving him a hand and stuff like that, which he is now turning around and paying forward to other people on the field. And not
nice
to say that Jordan's not a great, yeah, for sure. And not to say that Jordan's is like not a nice guy. He's not like an exception because, he's a great guy. But you see a lot of that on the Airsoft field and it's awesome, right? I know, Pat, like people ask you teching questions and advice for, how to fix their broken gun on the field. I'm going to say every single time you play.
Yeah, pretty much. Or it comes up because people are talking about like, oh, they want to upgrade something. Mm-hmm. And yeah, people here are relatively aware that this is something I know how to do, and it's fantastic. It sparks a lot of great conversations. As you've definitely figured out, if you're anyway a long-time listener, I like to nerd out about working on building airsoft guns, playing around with them. Talking to the guys on the Discord about various crazy things we want to build this summer has been a great laugh. And honestly, talking to the local guys about it at the Airsoft field is, one of the oldest parts of the, as Phil would say, Airsoft adjacent stuff that I've done in this hobby that I enjoy. Because I like talking to people about how they can upgrade their setups, but I also love talking to people about the insane things they've done with their guns. It's like, hey, Pat, you want to hear about my short-barreled, double sector geared M4? And I'm like, I want to hear about it as long as it hasn't exploded yet.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and you build these relationships with people who, we've talked about this before, but in other contexts of your life, you basically would have nothing in common with these individuals, right? Either because they work in a completely different field than you do. They could be, there's a huge age gap. Like I think about like me and like Johnny's dad, for example. Like we would never have bumped elbows, not really, because we're in completely different fields. Like he's a pilot and I work in an office. He's old enough to be my dad pretty much, but he's not. Where else am I going to have interactions like that if not in such a niche sport? And it's a really good opportunity to exchange and, expand your perspective, and all that is fine. But you also, as a consequence of that, really have this camaraderie that comes on the airsoft field that is, I would say, is not unique to airsoft, but it's certainly unique to niche hobbies like airsoft.
And, speaking for myself, I have a lot of combat sports that I am involved in, but I've never really been a team sports guy. And the camaraderie of the team aspect has been a huge, huge thing for me. But also our team includes a ton of people from different backgrounds because we all met through airsoft and essentially formed up on the basis of, whether or not we thought you were a chill person we wanted to have a beer with. And that has worked out to being an excellent, excellent group of people, but also an intensely diverse one.
Absolutely.
Which is fantastic for, I think, broadening our worldview, and also for teaching, me how to lift weights. And, I don't know, I hope someone has enjoyed the fact that I've definitely philosophized about way too many things over way too many pints of stuff.
Yeah.
You haven't all kicked me out yet, so you must have enjoyed some of it.
There's also this nice thing that happens with helping players on the field as well, whether they're on your airsoft team, big T team, let's say, capital T team, versus just on your team for a game. And I was looking at some footage recently because it's been a while since I played airsoft and I was just sort of missing it, so I decided to scrub through some old footage. But there's this moment that happens where I'm sort of behind the brim of, but just about to basically crest this little hill, and I know that there's enemy players on the other side, and I look to my left and there's a friendly player and he's behind cover and he's like looking in his mag, and he's a renter or something like that, and like he's looking at the mag and he's very clearly like with his body language being like, oh yeah, I'm out of ammo or whatever. So I shout to him, I'm like, hey, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm out of ammo. And I'm like, what kind of gun do you use? And he's like, what? I'm like, what kind of gun do you use? And he just puts it up, and it's an M4 rental. And I just take a mag out of my vest and I just throw it at him. I'm like, here, use this. And he puts it in. Right? Well, yes. And I'm famous for like either yeeting mags or having them, yote on me, yeeted at me. But anyways.
I like yote better, but.
I throw this mag at him. And I'm like, here, put that in your gun. And it's probably like .3s and it's a stock rental gun and the hop-up's not set. But in that moment, I'm not thinking about that. It's like, he needs ammo. I got ammo. Here you go. Right.
And I mean, he gets to keep playing and keep going pew pew out of that. So I doubt he's complaining, right? Like that's a win for everybody.
Yeah. And like, I'm not saying that because it's like, oh, look how nice Phil is. But like, you see that kind of stuff all the time on the field. I am not special. I share my ammo with everybody. And I'm sure that if the role had been reversed and I was like, hey, do you have any ammo? He would have been like, yeah, here you go. Here's the mag. If of course, assuming he had one. That's happened to me before, where people are walking off the field because they're like, oh, well, I'm dead or whatever. And they leave their gun behind for me so that I can use their gun because it's better than mine or it's more applicable for that scenario. You see that all the time. All the time.
I've definitely, walked off the field, and while I was walking off, handed my AR to not even necessarily teammates, just like people who I know who play, who I'm like, this is definitely a better tool for what you're currently doing. Here you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that extends to in between games too, right? We've all definitely shared ammo with, people who were there and needed ammo. And I've definitely had people go, oh yeah, I'll top you up, whatever. Like,
Totally. Or batteries. Huge. Like, on the field or off the field. It's like, does anybody have a lipo? It's like, yes, here you go.
I think that's why we all have 3, like, just, to, admittedly to accommodate, teammates forgetting them and forgetting to charge them or whatever, or having them break is definitely the methodology that caused us to initially have more than one per person. But yeah, I mean, we're super willing to loan them to people, and so is everyone else. And, there's no recurring issue where they disappear or anything, other than occasionally into, our gun bags. We've definitely had it happen where Phil's like, oh, hey, Pat, I found 3 of your batteries in my stuff. and vice versa. But that, too, is a kind of nice, I was wondering where those were, moment. They're not. There's no negative there. It's just sort of like, oh, well, that's where they went.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, I feel like that there's a lot of positivity to be had there. I've definitely gotten a lot of, to be honest, joy out of letting renters use my rifle for a game. you know, just because, you know, random kids like, man, you know, like it really feels shitty that everyone else has all these better guns than me. It feels unfair. And the look of evil glee on their face when you give them something that works a little better than a rental gun is well worth playing a game with a rental gun or my spare gun or my sidearm or whatever bizarre thing Johnny or Steph brought today, right? Yeah, it's like, here, use my M4. I'll use the Garand for a game just for fun.
Yeah, totally. And you know, to come back to that, I mean, that's a nice feeling for them, but it's also nice for the community because, like, once they see that, they're like, oh, wow, this is way better. Like, maybe you just hooked a lifer. Like, you don't know, right? Worst case scenario, they're like, thanks very much, and they never come back. That's the worst case. I mean, worst case scenario, they break your stuff. But, like more, like, accurate worst case scenario is thanks for loaning it to me, and then that's the end of that. But in most cases, when they see that performance, they're gonna be like, okay, that's what's possible. This is cool, right?
For sure. And like, I can comfortably say actually that the only person who's ever broken an airsoft gun belonged to me is me.
Yeah.
You know, and like, despite the fact that I've loaned them out to renters and loaned them to you and loaned them to, you know, teammates and stuff, almost every time that I can remember my gun failing and me needing to like actually do something with it, it's been in my hands. And yeah, part of that's like, people are not going to be super hard on other people's gear for the most part.
Yes, yeah, you're
right?
probably not
Like,
going to take a dive into a ditch or something.
you know, and I mean, that's fine, but it's positive and it's community building, right? I mean, we all do the, you know, trying out people's guns in between games and messing around with other people's gear because, let's face it, you know, the guy who showed up today who has the Chris Vector is, you know, going to get too many people asking them to try shooting it just because it's cool. You know, although in fairness, one of the most common requests I think this summer to borrow was people just going, that's the only 249 here. Can I try it for a while? I was like, it's not working as well as I'd like it to, but sure. You know,
Yeah, that's right.
Like, and hey, I mean, airsoft gun, go burr.
Yeah. I think one of the things that really stuck out, like when we were thinking about this episode and like what are some of the nice things, one of the nicest things for me was the opportunity. I guess this comes back to this idea that no matter what, like we have airsoft in common with other players. And so we've had players come to the field who were new Canadians, right? They were either coming to Canada, moving to Canada, here for like study, whatever you want to call it, right? And basically being able to bring them into a community when in many ways they might feel homesick or they might feel like they're not part of a community because they're only transitory or they're just getting here, stuff like that. Being able to welcome them in to our airsoft community, whether they're people coming from, you know, because we live in a university town, coming from China to go to university, or people who were refugees coming from, you know, Syria, people who are moving here for work from the Philippines, or even people who are just moving here for whatever reason with their families, right? Being able to welcome them and say like, hey, you know, let's play airsoft, like let's hang out, like we're cool people, you're cool people, doesn't really matter. That's been a really nice thing for me. And one of the things that stood out to me in particular was one time getting the opportunity to play with a guy who was from France. And his English was not awesome, but he was a new Canadian. He's coming here, he's trying out airsoft, and we can speak French. That meant a lot to me, and it definitely meant a lot to him as well, because now suddenly you're not struggling, right? And for those of you who may not speak a second language, or maybe you do speak a second language, but you never had the opportunity to see what it's like to be in a place where you have to rely on that second language that you're not super strong at in order to get by, it can really feel debilitating. Like it can really feel like you're like, firstly, it's exhausting. When you have a second language and you're always constantly having to try and figure out what it is that you need to say in order to be able to get your message across, it's exhausting. You know, I've spent time in Mexico, for example, and my Spanish is okay, but it's not amazing.
It's better than mine.
It's well,
it's
and
available.
it's also better than you. It's also better than your French. I will also throw in there, but
absolutely,
it's exhausting. After a while, you're like, my brain is just fried. And so, being able to come and like enjoy a leisure activity and then not have to worry about also figuring out what you're going to say, that I'm sure, because I've been on sort of the other end of that. I'm sure that was really helpful for this individual, and I'm really glad that I got the chance to do that. Also, because it's kind of like your own secret language. Like, people are like, oh, they can hear your comms. Yeah, but if they can't understand what you're saying, even if they can hear it, like, I mean, that's kind of a bit of an edge. And it was, for me, it was super cool because I don't, get a chance to play airsoft in French. Like, I watch all these like French Foreign Legion videos where you can hear them talking and using all these terms. I'm like, yes, I finally have an application where I can say these things, because the only people I speak French to are like my family, and like they don't care about tir à répétition or whatever, right? So like, yeah, that was a really nice experience for me, and I know that it was a nice experience for this individual as well.
And one of the awesome things about that is, even without the language aspect of it, that is generalizable to playing airsoft, right? If you travel somewhere, you can pick up, a random game pretty easily, if you're traveling to like a major center at any rate. And if you move somewhere, this is a ready-made source of people who share an interest with, right? In addition to sort of, the activity and the getting out and getting some exercise aspects of the game, this provides you an avenue to make social connections, and that's fantastic. And the nature of airsoft as a global sport means that there's a global community, right? Our Discord is a really fantastic example of that. We have people there from all over, and I've had a bunch of awesome chats with people about over the last couple of weeks about how to use a rowing machine, how not to destroy your back while using a rowing machine. Lots of gun teching stuff, people asking me questions about gun teching, but also people tossing me wicked ideas, suggesting new and interesting ways for me to spend the money that I shouldn't be spending on this, which I love.
And there's almost like this, it's its own language around airsoft that's beyond just English. I mean, technically it is English, but I think in a lot of videos that I've seen, like, people will use the English term for certain things, for like hit, for example, right? Like, I know what hit is in French, but I see French airsofters say hit all the time, right? So I think that's
it's a
part of
three-letter.
this.
It's a three-letter word for ouch.
Well, I mean, yeah, I suppose. But in any way, I guess my point is to say, like, you had this opportunity to come and join a community where you already know some of the unofficial language, right, in order to be able to communicate with people, right?
For sure. And, I think in some ways the terminology is sort of cross-language in the sense that, I think there's a finite number of things that have a tappet plate. That's fair. Yeah. And if you're, if you're ordering parts for airsoft, often you're going to be ordering them in English because it's internationally one of the dominant languages of business, right? I unfortunately have to order parts from the States pretty regularly. Not unfortunately because I hate buying things from the States, but definitely because I hate having to pay for shipping. That the extra $10 of shipping that adds on is not always desirable, nor is the customs fees. But if you're in France, I assume you're also going to have to order from the States or the UK with some degree of regularity for parts. Or hey, if you happen to read and speak, Taiwanese or Chinese, then you're in it, right? You have a much easier chance of getting parts. I remember at one point, very early in my airsoft career, when I was still running the Scar, the latch that locked it, in the stock in place, had snapped off. And I was communicating with someone on Airsoft Canada, the forum that we were using at the time, and which we're still using for a lot of stuff, and about parts for various guns, like going through them to order parts because they spoke the language that needed to be spoken to order parts specifically from G&G. Right. And they were like, oh yeah, I mentioned to them that you'd had this problem and they're just going to throw in a stock latch for free. And I was like, wow, I literally could not source that part anywhere. And it's like, I mean, if you'd sent him the request in English, he probably would have looked at it and gone, I don't actually know what that means. I'm like, yeah, fair enough, like, I mean, and in the defense of the, guy checking his email in a warehouse in Taiwan, if you sent me an email in Taiwanese asking me the same question, I would go, really?
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
Throw it in Google Translate. I don't know what this means.
Yeah,
Forget it. Whatever.
Exactly, right? Because
Yeah.
what else can you do? But I mean, that's fantastic, right? That is an airsofter. Back when the community was significantly less global in 2007, going out of his way to get me a part simply because he knew the gun was broken, that it would be helpful, right?
Yeah.
And that simply because he'd seen a picture of me. Like, I don't think I even asked him. I think he'd seen a picture of me that we posted to one of the gear discussions, and I had tape on the stock, and he was like, "Oh, I know what that is."
Yeah. It's interesting, like sticking to the language theme. I think one of the nice things that's happened, and this was a nice thing from a just a gameplay standpoint. The first op that we ran at Frontline, what was it called? It wasn't Vulture Strike, Last Refuge. So we ran this op, Last Refuge, at Frontline. This is 2012, I think.
Yeah, around there.
And what we decided to do was set up the village in the middle of the field as this like NPC town, and we were all going to be the NPCs, and the two teams would have to work with us as sort of like the locals to gain our favor, to do missions and get points and blah, 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 kind of stuff. But we decided very early on that the two entrances to the village would be barred off. There would be a checkpoint, and players would not be allowed into the village by us until such a time that they had, quote unquote, earned our trust. And that could be done in a variety of different ways. But basically, we would stop them from coming in. And if they fought us, then we'd fight back on this.
That's right, boys. Airsoft is an RPG now.
Yeah, basically. But we decided to throw in this extra layer of confusion by utilizing all the second language skills that we had on the team, namely myself speaking French, and Miles, who was an officer in the Canadian Forces at the time. He had very limited second language training in French because Canada. Anyways, let's move on.
But because he was an officer, his second language training included yelling at people.
Well, I mean, yes, there's that. So I told them, it's like, listen, if they show up here, you do not speak English. You only speak French. And so some guys at some point tried to sneak around, if you recall, and I started shouting at them in French, and they went like full on deer in headlights because they thought I was being serious with them, and they completely froze, and they're like, "Oh my god, did we do something wrong?" Like we just shouted them out of the village. But then
it was fantastic.
Later on,
like I swear to God, like if you'd kept shouting, I thought they were going to drop their guns, and it was just like,
yeah, well,
and like we weren't shooting at them. There was no danger. Phil was just standing in the village part of the field, yelling at guys about 150 feet away, "Stop, drop your rifle," in French.
Yeah, and they were not. But anyways, the point is, that wasn't the nice part. That was me being kind of an ass. But,
I loved it.
The nice part is later on, that team shows up at the gate, and then they called me over, and Miles says to me, it's like, "Oh yeah, they're not speaking French, but also my French is like not doing so great or whatever." And so they had actually went on their team and been like, "Guys, which one of you is any of you in French immersion? Because they're only speaking French, and we need a French guy to come up to the gate." And so they came up, they found a player on their team who spoke French to come up and talk to me in French. And as soon as they did that, I was like, this is so cool. Like the fact that they had the presence of mind to game this in this way. And then they were like, "Oh yeah, well, the guy was like, 'Oh yeah, we just want to come to your village. We want to help you.'" And I was like, "Okay, come on right in." Like it was just this amazing moment. And
it was seamless with like our gameplay intent, which was wicked. And I mean, as a teacher, like I was standing there, it's just like, this is making this kid's day. Like there is no way he is not just giggling inside over getting to use something that he probably is like, "Oh, why am I doing this?" At least some of the time. So having I hesitate to call Airsoft like a real world application, but having a direct application of it was almost certainly, wicked. And he was having obviously a ton of fun.
Yeah. And it was nice to see people, looking at a problem in a way that maybe you hadn't really like considered, or I guess in our case, it's not that we hadn't considered it. I just didn't expect that was going to happen. I didn't think people would be like, "Oh, well, let's see if our team has this natural interpreter on it." Like I never really considered that they would go that way. And the fact that they did was surprising, but in a really nice way, right?
It definitely did not come up in any of our discussion about
Yeah.
how this was going to go, that one of them would walk up and start speaking French back. And it's just like, wicked.
Yeah.
So good.
Absolutely. I think shifting gears a little, I think one of the nice things that we've had the opportunity to do over the last several years, and I think this is also as a consequence of, being, I'm going to call it marginally successful on social media and building a bit of a presence, but has been the opportunity that we've had to use our team to raise money for charity. I think that's one of the nice things that we've been able to do over the past few years. Either several years ago, we raised some money for Movember, which is it's a drive in North America and Canada and the United States where people don't shave in November, and they basically grow a mustache and they raise money to support. I think it's pancreatic cancer. I'm not sure.
I believe so.
So, but it's basically, it's raising money for men's cancer, men's mental health. Like, it's basically, it's a whole thing. But the point is, we were able to do that as a team and, raise some money. And that's one of the really nice things. We've been able to raise money and raise, food donations for the local community food sharing association. It's not something that, if I'm being honest, we do frequently enough, but it's something that we've had the opportunity to do. And to be honest, we're not unique. I've seen lots and lots of, charity, goodwill, efforts through many different communities, airsoft communities, I should say, across Canada and also in the United States. Whether it's for supporting veterans, supporting like PTSD, it's a big thing that we see in airsoft. And that's awesome, right? You have this opportunity to use your platform and to use your communities to do a bit of good. And I think airsofters do really good at that, right?
I agree.
In my experience anyway.
I agree. Part of it may come from the fact that, once you've shelled out $600 for an airsoft gun that is a toy, going, I can donate 30, 50, 20, whatever to a good cause is easier. Or if we're just all a little cracked. But it's been really surprising to me that we have been, as Phil said, sort of moderately successful in developing this as a platform for people. I'm regularly astonished, very pleased, but astonished that people are interested in tuning in to listen to us talk about this. And I don't mean that in a pessimistic way. Like, I think we'd still be doing it either way because it's super fun. But the fact that there's a community and that, we get to talk to you guys and people go, oh yeah, I liked or disliked this thing you had to say is awesome. But being able to, parlay being on an airsoft team into actually helping people is magnificent. It really, I don't think gets better than that. And in some ways, perhaps it's a thing we should do more often. I will note for amusement that for two of our Movember fundraisers, I raised money to keep my beard because people who know me have seen me without one, and they were in. Today, I had to shave due to COVID stuff at work, which is less than ideal. So Phil is currently being treated to my poor razor burnt chops, bereft of my facial hair.
Well, it's the first time I've seen you without a beard in conservatively 20 years. So, there's that.
It's pretty good. I realized earlier this evening that probably I have friends, including perhaps some members of our airsoft team, who've never seen me without one.
I would say most of them have never seen you without a beard. But to come back to the point, I think there's a really good opportunity for airsofters to use their platform to support causes that they care about. And you do see that a fair amount, right?
Definitely. And, I've participated in it even in other places, right? I've seen people raising money for hurricane relief, for, people who are struggling with PTSD, for people who are struggling with, mental health issues in general, which is something I'm passionate about. And, I've tossed money into the hat for people in, the States, in Europe, and not a ton. Like I'm not, a wealthy philanthropist or anything. But I often take the approach of, well, if I can afford to buy a Starbucks coffee, then I can afford to help these people and not get a Starbucks coffee, right? Like,
I think at the end of the day, we talked about it at the start. Airsofters are just, in my experience, by and large, just really nice people. And whether you're going to the field for the first time or whether you're returning to the field, you're going to be running into people that are there to have a good time. You're there to have a good time. And from the moment that you start engaging with them and having a conversation, you might have, a conversation about, what kind of ammo you use or what kind of gun you use or whatever. But from that point forward, you're just having positive experiences with these people. If you tag them during a game, then it's like, oh, that was a great shot, or vice versa. I mean, if they get you, you're like, hey man, that was awesome. And then you go back to the safe zone, and then it's a little bit of banter. It's like, oh yeah, well, I would have shot you, but my eyes were closed. So, good luck. That's lucky for you. We'll get you next time. And like, it doesn't matter if it's, a team, like just one individual or, multiple, like you have these relationships with these people and you build them so quickly, I find, playing Airsoft. And that's a nice place to be in, right?
For sure. And they carry forward. I've lost count of the number of times I've run into someone off the airsoft field and they've gone, hey, Pat, how's it going? And admittedly, I've gone, who are you? Because I find that once you take someone out of the camo, I am easily confused. But that's been really, really positive. It's been interesting for me because it's happened with, kids working at, Wendy's who also happen to play airsoft. But also like I've run into adults in, teaching and in, like, oh, I'm going to the dentist, and it's like, oh, hey, how's it going? People who I know through this because it takes you in people from all walks of life.
And I'd also add just, there's people who you can play Airsoft with like week over week, month over month that you have a great relationship with, and you might not even know what their name is.
Totally.
Right? Like, not everyone is as gregarious as maybe Pat or like Jordan being like, hey, I'm Pat. Who are you?
Totally.
I know I certainly am not. There's people who have played Airsoft for, months. And if it wasn't for a piece of name tape on their carrier that had some sort of name on there, I would have no idea what their names were. Right? There was one player at our field, Elizabeth, who her nickname that people gave to her was Queen, and of course that's because it's Queen Elizabeth, long may she reign. But the point of that is I only knew her by her nickname for a very long time before actually someone told me, oh, well, her name is Elizabeth. Right. And that's there's a guy who we used to play with who I think I mentioned in the podcast. We gave him the nickname Mine Layer, if you recall that conversation. I don't actually remember who that person was. I know his nickname. I know what he looks like. I do not remember his name.
And for added fun, I also get to run into students who play Airsoft, right? I get to run into people in my professional life who I play Airsoft with or who have played Airsoft with me, who are, kids in my class periodically. And that is hilarious. It does tend to result in a very different relationship in my classroom, in the sense that they're perhaps a little more willing to give me shit because they've shot me in the face lately.
Yeah.
But, it was really, really funny when our YouTube started up and people started going, hey, are you on YouTube in like in an airsoft team? And I'm like, no.
That ain't me.
I have no idea what you're talking about. And they're like, yeah, sir, I'm pretty sure that's your beard, like, that I'm looking at right now. And I'm like, yeah, that'd be me.
Yeah. But it's nice to be able to have these kinds of relationships with people. It's nice to be able to have this hobby that allows us to build friendships really quickly.
And connect with people.
And connect with people who, like we were saying when we said it many times, that we never really would connect with otherwise. Whether it's people because they're really far away thanks to the Discord, or people who just because of their place in their life and your place in your life, you would never really connect with. Right? It's a really good opportunity, and everyone is playing Airsoft to have fun. right? Yeah, you're gonna have assholes. It's just like anything. Airsoft is not special. It doesn't matter if it's airsoft or whether it's bowling or whether it's professional downhill skiing. You're always gonna have people who are jerks, but they're not the majority, right? The majority are just really cool people, and we've had a really good fortune to be able to be able to meet and play with a lot of these people, and that's really nice. And if people don't take anything else away from this episode, it's really to give some thought to like how nice has it been that you've been playing airsoft. Like you, the listener right now, who I'm speaking to directly, how nice has it been for you to play airsoft? Yeah, it's had its ups and downs, but it's been pretty awesome, right? And I think we need to spend more time thinking about that, right? It's very easy to fall down this rabbit hole of frustration. I've been there. Like, I mean, when my gun wasn't working, just like bang your heads against trying to figure out how this max hop up is going to work in this gun and shaving down metal bits. And like, it's easy to fall down this rabbit hole. But at the end of the day, it's actually kind of nice, right?
Definitely. I mean, it's, I think the piece that I'll end on for me is, it's given us something, else in our lengthy friendship to grow close over, right?
Yeah, totally. That's very true, right? One more way that we can interact with each other and hang out and make something.
Yeah.
Right. I think the last thing that I would say about airsoft for me in particular, and this is more airsoft adjacent, but it has to do with like the community that we've built on Discord for sure, but also being able to crystallize a lot of our knowledge and share it in a way that people actually want to listen to and to partake in, right? And that's nice. It's not everyone who has the opportunity to have a platform like we have, and it's not a very big one, but we're very, very grateful that when we make a video, people want to watch it. And sometimes people make, funny comments and people don't agree with what we have to say, and that's nice too, right? That means people are willing to engage, right?
Yeah, no, it is fantastic. This is, to go with the theme of the episode, a nice hobby.
Yeah. Well, guys, we hope you found this discussion on the nice aspects of airsoft helpful. I really do hope that you take some time to think about how nice this hobby is for you and how much it contributes to your own life and how much joy it brings into your life, just like it does for us. But, until you are willing to join the Discord and tell us a little bit about that or leave it in the comments, that's all we have for you this week, and we'll talk to you next week.
Have a good week, everyone. Thank you, as always, for tuning in.
Take care, everyone, and stay safe.